Welcome to Might in Motion, where we help you navigate your personal and professional goals to manifest them into your deserved career and life path. Here at Might in Motion, we don't make excuses, we do the work and go above and beyond. The Might in Motion podcast brings you guests that will help stretch you out of your comfort zone and push you to improve your goals. Like, comment, and share. This is Might in Motion. I'm bringing to you Brandon Blocker. He's a lieutenant in the Air Force, but he's also the CEO and founder of Oak Lounge Games. If you're anything like me, I love playing card games, board games, etc. And just wanted to bring him on because he's got a great story to tell. And I think if any of you are playing the game of life, you need to be able to play some other games as well because competition is really, 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 really important. So I'm going to add Brandon here. Hey, welcome.
Hey, Mariana. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Oh, thanks for joining us this evening. So you have a very interesting story. You are a young entrepreneur, but you're also in the Air Force. Thank you for your service, by the way.
You're welcome.
Tell us a little bit about how you got into creating games.
Sure. Yeah. So, believe it or not, I kind of get that question a lot. It is kind of a unique niche to jump into. So really, I always grew up around games. Always loved playing games. My very first game that I made, I was actually like 5 years old, and I made like little Play-Doh figures and like drew out a map. And I still have the shoebox. I should probably have had it set up for this call, but so I've got kind of like the inspiration, like very first game we made. Skip, a decade or two, and in college, kind of looking at different entrepreneurial ventures, and we really just kind of circled back. So the way that Oak Lounge game specifically kind of got started is we had actually just finished a really successful real estate deal. We were trying to figure out what to do with the excess capital and where we wanted to deploy it. I was studying at the time, continue to study acquisition entrepreneurship. So I was kind of going through that route, kind of playing around. Well, we're comparing comparing the rates of return from real estate to a privately owned business. It's like, yeah, real estate's good, but owning a business is even better.
Yeah.
And I was like, heck, cardboard, plastic, ink, surely the margins will be wonderful. It's going to be so much fun. We're just going to make some board games and it's going to be fantastic. I've learned that it's a little bit more difficult than that. There's a little bit
Oh
more
yeah.
to it. But that's kind of how we got started, and it just continues to be a wonderful experience to kind of flex my business muscles and play with my like corporate managerial accounting skills and kind of put that to application, and how much am I spending per box, and how
Yeah.
much am I spending per card that goes into that box. And so yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
That's really, really cool. So, as a little bit of a background to those of you who are tuning in, Brandon and I met at a small diner on Black Friday in Perry, Georgia. And I was down visiting family, and I wanted to go Black Friday shopping, but I wanted to hit small town, right? I didn't want to go to the big box retailers. And it was really, really fun because I had my mother there and my two girls, and he walks in and starts setting something up. And we're looking, and I'm talking, oh, look, he's setting something up. You know what? He hears us, and he comes over, and he's like, I've got a game for y'all to play. And this is the game he handed us. It's called Hide Your Nuts. So this will still not be an explicit call, just so y'all know. But this is a really, really fun game. It says 13 plus, but I do play it with my 6 and 9 year old. And this is from another company, but the company is out of Michigan.
Yes. So Hydra Nuts, they are one of our first, we call them community brands.
Uh-huh.
So we have two different arms right now. We have our in-house titles, and then we have our community brand titles. And our community brands are other games, other developers who've come up with a tangible product, and then we've partnered with them to give them more market exposure. Exactly,
Yeah.
like getting in front of you, um, and helping them get out and get exposure to markets that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. Because, yeah, the game was actually developed by two ladies in the education industry in Michigan,
Hmm.
but they shared a similar heart for, fully American, at least as much as possible. I don't know if we used the same manufacturer or not, but I mean, there's like a 1 in 3 chance that we kind of did because there's not a
Yeah.
lot of them out there. Um, so I think I just happened to run across them on Instagram, and of course, like I saw the title and immediately, lost
It's
it.
so fun. Yeah, it's
And I don't,
funny and yeah.
yeah, I think I might have actually bought the game before I like actually looked through their website and like saw what it was. I was just like, okay, I'm sold on the title alone.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, so that sparked it. So they are one of 4 community brands that we have right now. And then
nice.
going into 23, we're hoping to kind of pivot and change things up a little bit and maybe take on some more. So we'll
And
see.
then we also got Bootleg, which I adore as well. It's very gangster-esque and this is another one that, I think the age is higher because of, we were talking about liquor and stuff, but
Yeah.
it's a really fun strategy game. Really awesome. And so now this is your private brand, right?
Yes.
And we talk a little bit about how there's only a few production, like manufacturing in the United States that does this type of stuff. So,
Yeah.
how do you think about sourcing? And I love sourcing because I come from big box and I've had to deal with it.
Right.
And I deal with shipping and all that. So, being on
hmm
that smaller scale, how do you how do you deal with sourcing?
Okay. Well, so actually, I guess before I dig into our sourcing, so we have our sourcing on the inventory side with the community brands, but
Mhm.
then for Bootleg specifically, we actually acquired the intellectual property as one of our like first like big moves as a business too.
Yeah.
So we found them as an active brand, as an active title that wasn't being fully produced, and we were able to meet with the creator and present our case to him that we could help, kind of blow up and get more exposure and bring it to a larger scale. So that was kind of that sourcing through intellectual property and kind of like,
Mhm.
I guess, kind of sort of labor,
Yeah.
preformed labor. Um, but then, yeah, our sourcing when it comes to actual manufacturing, um, I think I gave you kind of the quick snippet, but yeah, so our going in position was, all of our titles that we produce in-house are gonna be wholly American made. So that's
Mhm.
development, that's design, that's production. So getting into the nitty-gritty, I mean, that's like the game designers and people coming with the mechanics of the games, that's our artists and the people who are actually, like, drawing out sketches and stuff. All of that is based in the US. So we didn't go
Wow.
on, Fiverr, we didn't use any of those other like platforms that a lot of people conventionally use these days for that kind of labor, and we chose to be very specific about that. Um, and then, so that was our sourcing from the labor intellectual property side. But then on the physical side, um, we scoured the entirety of North America.
I'm sure.
Um, so we had a very clear going in position. There's about maybe 5 to 7, like, really big, manufacturers in our space that are based, typically overseas, in
Mhm.
Asia, East Asia, um, and then a few scattered, throughout Europe. But there was really only, like, 5 to 7 from Canada down to Mexico. So we kinda started there, and we said, "Well, manufacturing in America, we'll say the entirety of North America," and then narrowed down our scope further to the US specifically. Um, we reached out and contacted everyone that we could find. We even got as far with one company as, like, paying them for the initial, like, prototype and, like,
Mhm.
starting to get things in motion, and, they got back to us and they said, "Oh, well, for your artwork, you forgot to put made in China on the box." And that was such a devastating blow because I had spent, like, months at this point, and this was the
Oh,
furthest we had gotten. We were like, "We finally
yeah.
found one. The price point is perfect, exactly where we wanna be. They actually do everything in the US." And when I went back through it, I missed the step, and I didn't mention that to them in any of the emails. I just assumed, and
Yeah.
and based on their website and everything. So I was devastated, and my wife, was being supportive, and so as I'm like trying to like recover from this massive blow, and like how is this going to even be possible? Do we just need to do this like everyone else does? And and she picked up the phone. She called the very first manufacturer that we found that's based in Michigan, and gave them another call because I'd sent them an
Mhm.
email and I hadn't heard anything back at the time. They immediately hooked us up with an account manager, and the rest is history. So we've done two full print runs through them now. Incredibly happy, but they are wholly U.S. based, which is again, which aligns exactly with what we're shooting for as a brand.
Yeah, I mean, it does take that diligence and time and perseverance,
Yeah,
and yeah, you got hit with a blow, but then to be able to pivot and work together as a team is really, really cool. Um, why does American made matter to you?
yeah, yeah. So I kind of look at it holistically. So without going maybe too much in depth on one specific point, um, first off, supporting American businesses, keeping that money in the U.S. Is important for a few different reasons. There's I don't I should probably do more research on the statistics of it, so I'm not going to get like too far into that. But I've heard from a few different sources that I think it's like 80 cents on the dollar that stays within a community, like
Yeah.
continues to, or sorry, $1 for every $1 spent within a community, I think like 80% stays in that community, or like something along those lines. Um, and so for us, working with American, again, creatives, working with manufacturing companies, that's critical to us, to keep that money in the U.S. From a again kind of my military background showing from a more strategic perspective, wars aren't fought as much with guns and bullets as they have been in the past. The
Yep.
last year in Eastern Europe kind of goes against that rule, but even the behind the scenes of that, it's all based on the economics, really. Um, so when we were looking at the different people, the different big manufacturers that source our business, most of those manufacturers are based in nations that economically stand in opposition to the U.S. in addition
Mhm.
to principles and militarily. And so looking at that, um, we want to do something different. We wanted to make sure that we're hoping to encourage other business leaders to bring that manufacturing back to the U.S. to not be supporting countries that are economically opposed to us and our way of life, um, but then also to encourage those U.S. manufacturers to keep going and stick with it,
Yeah.
and encourage them to persevere. That company, the first company that I mentioned,
Mhm.
I ended up talking to the owner actually. Through the process, I was so frustrated. I ended up talking to the owner over the phone, and he's like, "Yeah, 10 years ago we were totally U.S. based,
Yeah.
but the fact of the matter was we couldn't support the business, we couldn't compete with those overseas manufacturers, and we found that people weren't caring as much.
Mhm.
So as a business, as like one of five manufacturers in this industry in our nation,
Yeah.
they chose that, well, people obviously don't care. The market's not proving that it's worth it for us. So we're gonna take the order, and we're just gonna ship it right over. Um, and then also, again, why American matters, in regards to shipping, the ecological benefit of keeping it in the U.S. When we're talking about, again, we're like it's plastic, cardboard, and some ink, right? So so when we're talking about like the value of having that shipped, across the Pacific Ocean
Yep.
for the pleasure of U.S. based customer, when it all started in the U.S. anyways, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us. And then a lot of this was started during COVID times as well. So a lot of my peers who were small developers, small publishers, they're like, "Yeah, we just ordered 1,000 games and it's sitting off the coast
You
of San
can't get it.
Francisco."
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
going to be maybe 90 days before it enters the port and we can begin shipping. So now, their lead times are just indefinitely on hold,
Oh yeah.
whereas we're like, hey, we know when it's going to come in, and actually as soon as it's done, we're going to have it in a week, and it's going to be to you in less than another week, right?
Because that's really, really cool because not only were there delays at origin, there were delays at domestic ports. People were paying out the wazoo for detention and trying to get stuff off the port. And when you are a small company, you don't have that kind of bully power like the large companies do, right?
Right.
So you're probably on a container that's with like 50 other people on that same container instead of, owning, the whole ship, right? So
Right.
um, you know, one thing that I think is really, really cool, is that you have you're taking risks, right? You're taking
Oh yeah.
risks with uh, companies locally. And maybe you could just share a little bit more about your thoughts about being willing to go and take that kind of risk,
Okay. Yeah. So
especially when it comes to talent, right? Like you were saying, you don't use Fiverr and don't use some of this other stuff, these other kind of avenues.
yeah.
Taking risks on talent is really, really important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we've done talent a little bit differently. We've chosen to take a risk on young talent.
Mhm.
Um, so we are working with folks that maybe aren't established in the marketplace in their specific field. It might not even be the thing that they do full time yet,
Mhm.
and trying to provide them an opportunity to use their artistic talents, and their creative energies, their business acumen, in a really fun and unique setting. um, so I guess to touch a little bit on the nitty gritty, so our flagship title is actually Hero's Journey, that we got. I think we got in end of November is when we finally got our shipment in, and that was the first game that started Oak Lounge, and I had like $2,000 set aside, or no, I had a total of $5,000 set aside, and I was like, oh well, I think I can develop this game, develop all the intellectual property associated with maybe like 2 grand, and then I'll use the other 2 grand for production of like maybe 500 units, and then I've got $1,000 for marketing, like super super like small scale, um, and um, and I immediately ended up spending 2 grand on one of my buddies to help me like
Mhm.
write and co-author and co-design the game. And we hadn't paid for any illustrations or graphic design at that point, or production for that matter.
Yeah.
Um, but that said, we were able to work with folks that had full-time jobs doing something that maybe is not what they want to do forever,
Right.
and give them an opportunity to display their creative talents, creating artwork for a game. And now, every household that we get into, their name's on the box as, hey, this person helped design this game or create the illustrations for it. And so sourcing young talent has been important to us, um, because when I was kind of developing myself and going through college, as I'm sure you've probably kind of picked up, I'm a pretty proactive guy. I try
Mhm.
to do a little more than I probably should at any given time. So in college, I really kind of swung for the fences and different like job opportunities, and I didn't even get like the time of day. Like my emails weren't responded to, my
Yep.
12 phone calls were never picked up, my voicemails were never responded to. Um, and I'm sure there was a bit of ignorance in there that, well, I can just figure it out and figure out how to do this job, or be in property management or work with real estate development companies, things of that nature. Um, but I was never given that opportunity. And so I
Mhm.
would see my peers around me, especially again in American college, we have some of the brightest people in the world,
Yep.
and the cost ratio for the what you're going to pay for that talent and that labor compared to what you're going to pay in 2 years when they're out, it's like night and day difference.
Right.
um, and giving those people an opportunity to pursue those higher level jobs and those higher level skills and develop themselves outside of the more traditional college level jobs, right? um, so yeah, so that's kind of how we take risks in terms of our labor.
Which I think is great. I mean, I've had, when I was in college, I did tons of co-ops and internships. And now, in corporate America, when I'm looking at resumes, it always stands out to me when there is an applicant that has really put themselves out there to work while they're going to school. And
Hmm.
sometimes I find that you're in an interview with somebody and they may be highlighting an internship they have, but they didn't put on there that they were an Uber driver, or they didn't put on there that they were a waitress. And like those jobs too actually have a pretty big impact. And
Mm,
it's all about how you spin your experience. So even
mm,
if someone is young and is they're doing they maybe in high school they started working at a fast food joint, and then in college they're working to help pay for their education. As a hiring person, like that really resonates with me.
mm,
Like I have found in some of those interviews, I'm like, hey, why didn't you mention, like, for example, Uber? Like, why didn't you mention that you were, an Uber Eats delivery driver? I don't
mhm,
know. It didn't seem like it was relevant. Well, you're interviewing with me and I'm in transportation. It's
mm.
relevant, right? Like you're telling
Sure.
me that you can manage your time, you can manage a route, you can do,
Mm,
do XYZ, you maintained a 5-star rating, or whatever, right?
yeah.
These are things that is as you have the opportunity to talk to young talent out there and helping them understand that those things that they're doing now, which they may think is I'm just doing this on the side, it's my side
Mhm,
hustle, right? That side hustle can build into something much much bigger. If they really put forth that effort and take that risk, like you were saying.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's cool to be in such a collaborative industry and collaborative nature because we all benefit. Every
Yeah.
unit that goes out, everyone that's on the box benefits from it, from the people who design the game to the people who play test it, because we put them on the box too. So the
Hmm.
people who are sitting down and spending hours of their time looking at our cutouts and whatnot, those
Yeah.
people get to benefit and say like my name is on a game box. And
Yeah.
we're all hopeful that it'll blow up and be out there for a while.
That's really, really cool. So I always try to kind of close with this question. And so I'm going to ask you, though, 10 years ago, if you looked at yourself where you were 10 years ago, what would you tell the person you were then? So I don't, you may have been in high school. I don't know where you were 10 years ago, but like, what would you have told Brandon Blocker at that time?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I would have been on the back end of high school at that point.
Hmm.
Um, really, I would have told young Brandon to focus on the relationships
Yeah.
because that was something that I missed until after graduating college. And at that point, I'm like, golly, the amount of opportunities that were just kind of, I'm not going to say squandered, but the amount of opportunities that I had to network with people like yourself while I was
Yeah.
in college, network with other people who were up and coming and being proactive as my peers, and then where they are now, 3, 4, 5 years later. Um, that's something that I wish I would have focused on a lot more in high school and then in college, 'cause, I really focused in on the get good grades, figure out what you're
Hmm.
doing with your life, but totally missed that social element. So,
Yeah.
now on this side, I'm working, extra hard to develop those relationships and meet people and, make cool connections like this one.
Yeah, it's really you say that, but it's so true, right? Like, and it's hard, I think, for a lot of folks, especially if you're still in a work from home kind of environment of how do I can build those
Mhm.
relationships? How do I continue to network if I'm not walking down the hallway or riding the elevator with these
Ah,
people? You have to be very thoughtful and specific about what how you reach out to folks, right?
yeah.
And as I've talked to different people, especially, with the folks that might be working from home and they're new to the company, right? Like, how, they'll look to me and they say, everybody here. And I'm like, well, yeah, I've been here 20 years. So it's different, right? You've been here
Yeah.
5 minutes. Here's my
Mhm.
suggestion. You have to put yourself out there,
Mhm.
which might mean you don't get the return phone call or you don't get the return email, like you said, but you
Right.
continue to put yourself out there, you're going to show up. It's just
Mhm.
like the algorithms on social media, right? You continue to post, you continue to provide value, continue to give, and you'll see those networks increase and grow and expand. Um, and then it starts pivoting to, I always call it the Godfather mentality, which is might be why I kind of lean toward buying the bootleg one. But like for me, the Godfather mentality is like, okay, I'm going to do this favor. At some point, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to ask a
Mm,
favor in return, right? And
yeah.
so it all goes back to giving. So if I'm giving and I'm constantly giving, I'm giving, it will come back to you, and it'll end up coming
Mhm.
back to you tenfold because you're putting that out there for the people you work with, the people that are important to you in your life, your spouse, your kids, your friends. Um, yeah, it's just this. It's very interesting to see how doing that actually comes back to you. And so
Yeah.
I love that you want to tell your I want to say 10-year-old self, but your 17-year-old self, like, hey, this is like, don't forget that part, because it's more than just like having fun. You're right. You're creating bonds and relationships that are going to serve you to come.
Yeah.
So
Well, you have no idea where those people are gonna be in 5, 10, 20
yeah,
years. And
no,
whatever the impression you made with them during that time period, that's what's gonna last when you show up to the high
oh
school
yeah,
reunions and you see
yeah.
them later
Or
on.
and it's not just like in high school. Like there were things that I did 10 years ago or said 10 years ago, at work, and things that might still haunt me. Or like, oh, are
Yeah.
you going to react this way? Because I remember you reacting that way. I'm like, dude, that was like 15 years ago. I was a completely different
Right.
person, or it was a bad day. And they only remember the bad day, right? And
Yeah.
so you got to overcome some of that too with like, how do you just try to be more positive and interactive with folks is just, it's really, really important. So speaking of interacting and creating relationships, tell us what's the best way for people to really connect with your company, with your brand, and with you.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So honestly, the best is probably through our social media, through Instagram. We're
Okay.
super active on there. We're at Oak Lounge Games. Um, we also have a really great website, oakloungegames.com. But yeah, we love seeing people getting involved and showing us, when they're enjoying our titles and the people that they're showing. We got friends in Europe that like to send. I think it's a little bit of a power move. He's like, hey, playing Hydro Nuts, but also here's the Swiss Alps behind me. Like, all right, dude. Well, thanks for sharing.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I think if you're hiking
Yeah,
that in the Swiss Alps, you are definitely winning over me doing
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but yeah, so we're super active on Instagram. Love connecting with people on there.
That is awesome. So, Brandon, thank you so much for joining me this evening. This has been a wonderful conversation. Um, and it kind of takes full circle from when we met, like I said, at a diner in Perry, Georgia. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know who you're going to talk to. And, your games have been a staple in our household ever since then, and love it. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you for tuning into Might in Motion. If you learned something about motivation, momentum, mindfulness, or might, please like, comment, and share. Thank you.